Ahoy ahoy to all you smooth sailors out there, and welcome aboard the DeckTales Podcast. I'm your host and captain, Sammy Catlin, and this is the show where we set sail into the captivating world of ship life. Most of the time, delving into the best and worst experiences of the incredible crew members who called the open sea their workplace, but I'm open to the odd exception as well. Whether we're navigating stunning destinations to weathering unexpected storms, our guests all have stories to tell that will make you laugh, gasp, and maybe even shed an unexpected tear. So if you're a seasoned cruiser eagerly awaiting your next embarkation, or just curious as to what goes on at sea, DeckTales is your boarding pass to a world of nautical narratives. My guest today is Mr. Daniel Falconer, a cruise ship staff member of 17 years who's worked as an entertainer of various ranks, a magician and DJ. I caught Daniel between companies as he'd just left one and was in the process of applying for the next. He had a lot of relatable stories being a fellow entertainer about stuck-up, immovable guests, exceptionally high-strung fly-on divas. He brought me up to speed on how cruise ships are trying to improve their onboard internet, and much, much more. So let's anchor up and dive right in. Hello, hello, hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Daniel, great to see you.
Yeah, how's it going? Sam or Sammy, what do you prefer?
No one calls me Sammy. Literally.
I thought I saw it somewhere, but maybe...
you know what it is, Daniel? It's very polite of you to ask me what I prefer because no one else has done that. The only reason I put my name down as Sammy because it flows better with the intro of I'm your host and captain, Sammy Catlin.
Ah, got it, yeah, okay.
But literally no one has called me Sammy since the cruise ship days.
Fair enough.
Which I haven't been on since 2010, which is a long time. But it's DeckTales. It's not exclusively cruise ships. It's all things that float, basically.
Oh, yeah.
So you could literally, if you were able to take your bathtub out on the lake and have a story about that, then you'd be welcome on the show anytime, Dan.
Yeah, I could do that. I could probably make a new cruise line for myself. Bathtub cruises.
Bathtub cruise. But you work in the industry still? How's your journey?
Yeah, so I mean, I've been on cruise ships here for 17 years. 2007 I started. So probably similar to, is that when you started as well? I think probably in the 2000s.
2006.
Yeah. So yeah, I stuck with it. Like anytime I thought about doing something on land or quitting, then it just seemed to coincide with either a nice pay rise or a promotion, and just sort of stuck around.
Or a new itinerary.
Yeah.
New bunch of food at the buffet.
So right now at this moment, I'm in. That's true. Yeah. Right now at this moment, I'm on a bit of a sabbatical. I'm switching companies and switching kind of what I'm doing as well a little bit, but still within the industry. Like got a couple of not cruise ship contracts, but like jobs that I'm doing for cruise lines and stuff, and exciting things for the future. But yeah, my career is on a cruise ship was the entertainment sort of host role, which I know changes names on some cruise lines, but I started as the assistant cruise director stroke DJ on a smaller ship, double role, went to the deputy cruise director on that particular line. Cruise director for a long time. That was kind of like
wait. So assistant cruise director is not already like the deputy to the cruise director. They had to be one more step.
Yeah. So there's
for a small line.
Yeah, cruise staff is another name for it as well, like or cruise directors staff.
Or on some of the ships, entertainment officer.
Oh yeah, that's true as well. Yeah. So and then that's actually what happened afterwards. So after cruise director, I became what they then called entertainment director. So I had to wear the officer's uniform then, and you're not on stage as much. You're not really, you're behind the scenes. And then the last couple of years I was fleet manager. So that was a lot more of a
well, let me just stop you there, because up to this point, I mean, we've said the word entertainment a lot of times and it hasn't been all that entertaining.
That's true. And then
you were doing the game shows, the quizzes, the sports, the bingos, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So my main thing that I loved doing was the game shows. I see my trade as like a bit of a comedian, and I love improv and messing around with the audience. So not only hosting the shows in the theatre, but the funny little game shows and the smaller lounges as well was super exciting for me.
More intimate lounge spaces were always more enjoyable in my experience.
Yeah, and of course, filming the TV show. We film a TV show every morning on there, so you kind of have to have a finger in a lot of different pies.
Well, so are you? So you're in a transitional phase, but you've only just left one company.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming you wouldn't want to disparage anyone.
No, true. Yeah, yeah. No, I've got no hard feelings about any cruise line company. I've dabbled in a few of them, and in some ways, like the cruise lines are very similar to each other, and in other ways, they offer completely different products and different demographics and different people on there. And
Yeah.
I try and keep my options open. I love it, to be honest. I love working at sea.
I'm operating out of quite a small space. I'm in a studio flat in northwest London, Colindale.
Oh,
Yeah, living the life, mate. But this morning I was down in Forest Hill drilling up a storm. I was stupid enough to not take my SDS drill with me. And when I got there, she was like, "Oh, did you not read the full job description?" I was like, "Evidently not." So it's going to be a challenge, but not impossible. So I managed to get it done, but it was literally just to drill 12 holes. But I used my electric battery powered hammer action drill, and it took a lot out of me.
I can imagine. That's tough work, man.
Yeah, drilling through concrete with basically just battery power. I had to keep a tall glass of water just off to the side to keep dunking the drill head in so that it didn't keep overheating. And yeah, it was small. It was a very tight squeeze, and yeah, I don't want to talk about it no more. But I'm here. We're here
Yeah.
on DeckTales. We're not talking about drilling tales or other kinds of tales that revolve around work. You're working between jobs. So how long till you go in your next company?
So yeah, I decided to take a bit of a break. Partly was a little bit forced. What the company I work for went through one of those periods where they decided just to absolutely annihilate everybody and made so many people redundant. Gave a lot of people a chance to reapply for positions, but basically what happened. Have you ever heard of an axe man?
Like a guitarist.
Nah, not like not that type. But so someone's job who they go to a company maybe with a different job title, but
Yeah.
they go there to like clear out house basically. So I think that's basically what happened. We had this old lady.
Sounds like a great job.
She I wouldn't mind it, but I was on the wrong end of it, unfortunately. So
Sounds like a very good repeat business.
yeah, it was devastating for a lot of people. It was some bad stuff, but that's the nature of business. Like sometimes that happens. Like I said, they did give the opportunity for people to reapply for new positions. I don't know if the contracts will be as good as they were before, or what the sort of catch would be.
Hmm.
But I personally took it as a great way for me to, accept the severance, move on somewhere else. I was planning on moving on soon enough anyway. So yeah, it was it's been an interesting couple of months for sure. But actually, it's also been fantastic. Like in the last few weeks, the companies that have reached out to me, the interviews that I've had, like. It definitely seems like the grass can be greener for sure. So I'm looking forward to it. And I just did a little road trip, to clear my head a little bit around the Great Lakes. So yeah, I'm ready to go back to work now.
You're obviously a Brit, but you're not based up in England. You're based over in Canada somewhere.
Yeah, so actually I've got both. I've got a place in Bournemouth.
Okay.
I was talking to someone earlier. Is how funny a lot of people who work on ships like to live by the sea. But yeah, my place is in Bournemouth. But my other half is from Canada. So I've also got this place here in Toronto. So I still sort of bounce between the two.
So your next employment hasn't been secured yet. You've been doing the rounds, the interviewings, and now you're looking to get back on board.
Yeah, yeah. I've had a few like little contracted things, and I've got a few ways of making money outside of ships. Where just last night I did some stand-up comedy here in Toronto. So yeah, that was fun. They don't. It's obviously it's like more beer money than any career money.
I was going to say, what are they paying over there for stand-up? Was it open mic or was it like a 5-minute type five or?
It's like a level above like open mic. So you have to be booked in, but it's like for amateurs, yeah.
But so you're not doing stand up on board, you're doing magic and DJing.
Actually, yeah. So magic was how I started in entertainment in the first place. I was a teenager. I used to love doing magic, like, because when I was a teenager, it was about the same time David Blaine was doing all his street magic specials.
Yeah.
So it was kind of cool. That sort of, there was a very small window of opportunity where doing magic was kind of cool.
Wait, wait,
And
wait.
that's when
Going back when you was a kid, like, so we're a similar age, I'm guessing.
yeah.
Which magicians did you look up to on the telly when you was a kid?
Oh, I mean, we gotta mention Paul Daniels, man. Like,
That's it. I had the Paul Daniels magic set.
yeah, yeah. He's obviously the best British one. One that most people probably still haven't heard of, or is a little bit more low key. One of my favorites was Paul Zenon. He was like the British equivalent of David Blaine. He actually did the street magic before David Blaine, but obviously not being American, it didn't make it as big. But yeah, I used to love all of that. And then because I did magic, I was doing it in like nightclubs, and that's how I ended up falling into DJing, because magic paid really well, but it was only like 1 or 2 gigs a month. But DJing, even though it paid a little less, was every weekend. So I started doing a bit of that, and that's how I got the job on the cruise ship in the first place. A lot of my friends who were doing the same job, DJing or entertainment manager for a nightclub, they got a job on the cruise ship, and they kept coming back with like 6-packs and dancer girlfriends, and I was like, this is amazing. This is what I want to do. And neither of those things worked out for me. I didn't I didn't end up with a 6-pack or a dancer girlfriend, but I have got a beautiful wife now. Yeah.
A different kind of 6-pack, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. I had a lot of fun. Those first few years on the ships, and a lot of these people who I knew, they just used to go away and do like 1 or 2 contracts.
Yeah.
And I ended up doing it for 17 years. And someone said to me, with cruise ships or with ships in general, as you know, it seems like people either do 1 or 2 contracts, or they do 10, 20 years worth. Like no one's ever like, I'm just going to do it for 2 years or 3 years or something. But
I did 4.
Except for you. Maybe you're an outlier there. But
I don't know where, obviously, the cutoff point is between giving it a bit more time than just the one-offs and stuff, and then being like a career man, like a journeyman or whatever. I guess, 4 is a good. I did a different company like almost every year with the different title, if you like, and a different type of clientele, different types of itinerary. So I feel like I got a good experience for my money, if you like, for my time.
Yeah.
But I couldn't tell you. Everyone always asks, so who is your favorite? You've done it for 17 years. Do you have a standout favorite?
Standout favorite cruise line or yeah, I mean, it's going to be a really boring answer, but I really appreciate any cruise line or destination or demographic for what it is. There's good things I can enjoy for being in Alaska. There's good things I can enjoy for being in Mediterranean. Whether I'm with British guests or American guests, it's kind of a bit different. But for me, I think I love entertaining the Americans. So any American cruise line is going to be a little bit higher for me, because I get the extra benefit that as a Brit, like they already think like a mini Ricky Gervais is coming out, right? Like that's
so. Oh, come on, Dan! But to suggest that you prefer hosting to the Americans because you're already a novelty act.
Exactly.
It's easier to entertain them because you're a strange foreigner from a distant land.
But the great thing about being on the British cruise lines or the British ships is those days at sea on the open deck, when all the Brits go up there and they all want to sunbathe, but then you can put some really good music up there. I DJ'd a lot. Even when I wasn't the DJ, I used to go up and play for the Brits, and they have a good time then, you know what I mean? Like for the drinking and the partying, it's the hot days at sea, especially if they're in the Caribbean or the Med or something. That's when they really shine. That's when the Brits come out.
When you go and you just do bingo, that's when the Americans are out. It's like, whoa, different end of the spectrum.
Yeah. I remember once it was St. Patrick's Day, and I went out to do bingo, and everybody in the audience was wearing green. Like it was a sea of green. There was like glitter green, hats, all sorts of things. And I come out and I'm like, hey, everybody, happy St. Patrick's Day. Who's from Ireland?
No one.
No one. I was like, who's got Irish heritage? And they were like, yeah. And I was like, okay, they're all Americans, but they love it, right? You know, that probably as a newer country, they hold on to their heritage a lot more than we do. You know, we
I
don't.
guess. But so did they actually all? Well, I'm guessing you didn't run a DNA test on all of them, but like they claim
No.
to be all Irish, especially like the Boston Irish, or
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
certain places around the States where there's a lot more Irish influence than others.
Yeah, and I certainly think it's cooler in America to, you know, think your heritage is from Ireland and than say the UK. You know, they still, you know, think that we were their past enemies they had to kick out. So a lot of the British heritage people probably don't admit to it too much.
Well,
Probably change it to Irish a little bit.
well, let's not divert from that one too much. But so you didn't really answer my question, Dan, about your favorite company. You just said you liked hosting for the Americans because they were easy.
Yeah. I think you know, most of my experience was with Princess. So, you know, my heart is always going to be with them. I'm always going to follow what they're doing. And it was kind of like the perfect mix for me where it's not fully family orientated, so it's not like hundreds of kids everywhere, but there's enough. And I would say the best way to explain it is like the average age range of what they try and do is like parent age. It's like mum and dad age. It's not quite Holland America where it's a little bit older than that, and it's not quite Carnival, which is a level above. It's just kind of like right there. And I never really had too many issues on Princess on a day-to-day basis. Of course, there was issues because I was there for 17 years, so there's a handful of stories. But on the average day, everything works smoothly and went great. You know.
Well, we don't want to hear about all the good stuff that goes well all the time necessarily.
Yeah.
But if you've got stories that you want to tell us, but yeah, like I can appreciate that you're still in the industry, so you don't want to tell further your name.
Yeah.
And as you're still interviewing for the next batch of companies, I would hope that your affiliation with DeckTales wouldn't put a spanner in the works, Dan, because
No, sure. No.
there's some people that have some wonderful experiences to share and they're lovely to hear, but then there are those who've got some stories that are not so nice. But I think it's just as important to hear the negative as it is to hear the positive.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure, as you know, the industry, well, certainly since I started working in industry, no one had a smartphone. So there was very little window into the lives of crew members. Until you got on board, you didn't really know what to expect. Now there are vloggers and people that are paid essentially as influencers for the companies to showcase the wonderful lifestyle that it is. But it's not a true reflection of the negative stuff.
Yeah.
And that's where I come in. I'm kind of a bit of both. I'm not one or the other, but I'm not adverse to hearing the bad. So completely up to you what you want to share. Given
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, I don't have to say names or anything, so it doesn't really matter too much.
No,
but I'm also a cruise director, so I've got a very good way of staying fairly neutral.
Oh, that's great.
But funny enough, you mentioned the whole smartphone thing is one of my favorite things about, because when I speak to people who've just joined cruise ships like recently, and they're much younger, when I start telling them what it was like when I joined, it really dates me. Like it sounds like the Middle Ages, because I remember when I started on the ship, there's definitely no Wi-Fi, right? Like Wi-Fi was barely coming out on land at that point. Now you find Wi-Fi everywhere, but you know, back then when I started, there was Wi-Fi in one or two places in every town, and there was 4 computers on the ship for the crew to use, and you would have thought they would have been busy, but they weren't. Like people went to go check their email like once a week or something like that. Because when I started, sure, the iPhone had just come out and Facebook had just started recently, but no one really cared so much anymore. Like no one was on their phones like they are now.
No, because you treated Facebook like a once in a month dumping ground to upload pictures to.
Right, exactly, yeah, and it was such a different world, and the ship I was on was actually a bit older anyway. So not only did I join in 2007, but the ship, the structure and the things they had were already a few years behind. And I remember even to call home, they actually had like 2 or 3 phones that were like sort of covered, but on the open deck that you could use. And you had to use like a phone card to dial home. And sometimes there'll be a bit of a line to do it. And obviously when I joined the next ship, it got better really quickly. Like then you could call actually from your cabin itself. Yeah. And then obviously they introduced the Wi-Fi and then the apps and everything that happened. And now it's like, I do genuinely feel that the Wi-Fi speed on a cruise line makes or breaks for that cruise line. Like they're all competing to get the best Wi-Fi at sea. And with the younger people that are coming on, if you can't access your phone, if you can't upload a photo in a good enough time, it really puts a sour taste in people's mouths. So the money
Wow.
that they're spending now to make sure that it's at least a reasonable speed. And of course, the average guest doesn't really appreciate you're out in the middle of the ocean. Like
You'd think
necessarily.
more people would want to detach from their phones on a ship.
Yeah, but it's also like it's expensive, right? It's expensive to get those satellites.
Yeah.
I think it's got a bit easier now that we've got the Starlink, which a lot of cruise lines are jumping in on now. Elon Musk's satellites that go around. But even still, the cruise lines have to spend thousands. I'd say hundreds of thousands, if not millions a year, to make sure that there's Wi-Fi on board.
Just so you can upload your picture of you by the pool with a strawberry daiquiri.
Yeah, exactly.
Millions of pounds.
Yeah. But yeah,
You can't possibly wait to get home to send it up onto the social medias of the world.
Yeah.
But that's interesting that you say that because I don't really have much of a window into the current affairs on board ships. It's interesting that you say the kids today, they're looking at you like, what? You didn't have this, you didn't have that. I literally was asked by a friend day before yesterday if I had a picture of someone we used to go to college with, because he'd done away with all of his social media accounts and we couldn't remember exactly what he looked like or something. I can't remember, but I said, you know what, I'll have a rummage. I went into my wardrobe and I found an old iPod, which I think it was the first iPod Touch.
Right, yeah. So it looked like the iPhone, but it was just the iPod.
Yeah, it was slimmer. And basically, I bought it for like $90 from a Best Buy vending machine in LAX. When I was leaving the cruise ships, I think, when I was all between two contracts. And I managed to buy like a new cable for it because I'd lost anything that could juice it. And I got it charged up the night before it last. And I was like, oh my God, all these old games, all these old songs. What was I like? But there's no camera on it and there's no microphone on it. So it's literally just an iPod. And you can't get that around to some people now. Like, what was the first iPod? It just had a screen, it just had a wheel, and that was it.
Yeah.
To not have touch screen capabilities? Oh my God. You couldn't even imagine, right? And
it's crazy.
It's now, obviously, every phone has to have touch screen capabilities. Everything has to have cameras and mics. And look, we could never have done this show for love nor money of the cruise ship stories back when we were young and handsome.
You probably would have struggled 10 years ago. Like, it would have been a bit tougher for sure. Like even just to speak from Toronto to London without much of a delay, right? So yeah.
So you said you started in 2007. How old are you, Daniel?
I'm 41, 42 this year. Yeah, in summer I'll be 42.
Yeah. Oh, well done. Are you dyeing your hair? Is that a rude question?
No, actually, there is some grey on my beard. It's started to come through, but I don't. I keep myself chubby enough. There's no wrinkles. That's the secret.
Wow. I mean, you've got no stress in your life at all. If you've got not a single grey in your hair and you're in your 40s, well done, you.
Yeah.
What was the reason for starting the ships? Do you remember?
Yeah. So, like I said, I think there was a time where I saw people go off on the cruise ship. They were very complimentary of it. Mostly they kept coming back after doing one contract, but they were so excited. And I had this really cool job, which I never wanted to end. And it was entertainment manager at Jumpin' Jacks. I don't know if you remember those. There was a chain of nightclubs.
Jumpin' Jacks, they used to play
dueling pianos.
Oh, dueling pianos? What, live pianists?
Yeah, there was about 20 around the country. And I think in your area, they were mostly around the M25, not necessarily central London. But
there's a Jumpin' Jacks for sure in Basildon.
Oh, yeah, there definitely was one in Basildon, yeah.
Vegas.
Baz Vegas. I worked for them and I never wanted the job to end. I enjoyed it so much and I could sort of feel it was ending. Like we went from being open like 5-6 nights a week busy to only open Fridays and Saturdays, and some of it was a bit quiet. Yeah. And then it also turned out that I had recently broken up with my girlfriend at the time. I didn't have any pets. I didn't have any ties to be in the UK. And I just figured, like, if I'm going to do this, I have to do it now. Like, if I put it off, if I hold off, if I try and hold on to this job, I might end up with a girlfriend or a wife, like in a year's time. It's never going to happen.
Heaven forbid.
So Yeah. So what I did is I wrote a letter and I sent it off to 20 different cruise lines. If I'd known they were basically all owned by the same corporation, I probably could have sent like one letter. I got the job anyway. And then I had 3 responses from various. One of them said that they only employ people who've worked on ships before, which makes you wonder how anyone gets a job on board like with them, but they must just steal from other people, I suppose. And then I had 2 interviews with 2 different cruise lines, and I didn't realize that they were in the same building until it was too late. I went to the interview and then I realized this is the same place I need to be for the other interviews. And so I admitted it to the lady, and I thought it was all over because I said, oh, I have to apologize. I think I've got an interview here like in 2 days' time. And she's like, yes, I know. And she's like, it's with me. Oh no. Okay, so I didn't know if that was going to cause me any trouble, but and then I didn't really hear anything after the interview. I thought I messed it up. You know, being in entertainment, they asked me to tell a joke, sing a song, and do some performance, which I wasn't prepared for. They didn't tell me that was going to happen. I thought I was going for a regular job interview. So the joke I said was rubbish. I'm not much of a singer anyway, but yeah, it was just awkward doing it in an interview room with a few people watching, right? So
what was it? Tell a joke, sing a song, and what was the other one?
Well, they wanted some sort of performance, or you could pretend that you were doing an announcement, right? So that's what I did. So I pretended I was making some sort of like, without the microphone, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the, you know. Yeah, so I thought I messed it up. And I think I contacted them. I said, oh, I just wanted any follow-up on the interview. And they said, oh, we thought we'd messaged you already, but you've got the job. I was like, oh, okay. And then they... it took a while because you have to get a few things, right? You have to get your the visa, so you have to go to the American embassy. You have to get a medical.
Yeah, but that's a bit anticlimactic when you find out how you first get the job on board. It's like, oh, did we not already tell you got the job?
Yeah,
no.
I think it was a bit weird. And to be honest, the whole thing felt like it was a bit of a scam. Like I didn't even think it was 100% real.
Yeah,
especially
because you didn't think you did that well, and you got the job.
Yeah. And then, and also when they start saying, oh, you have to go get a medical and this is going to cost you a certain amount of money, like after, you know, especially when you're a bit younger, you're like, it shouldn't cost me anything to get a job. But after a while, you realize that that's part and parcel of the job. You have to have a medical.
With some companies, they pay for all of the training and the medicals and stuff.
And weirdly, on the company I was with, like, some positions get it. It's like written in their contract that they get it paid for and some don't. But anyway, in the UK, we're lucky because the medical you need to get is not overly expensive. Like in the States, it can go into the hundreds to get the medical. But for us, it's normally about £100.
I got the G1.
ENG1, yeah. So I got the medical and I went to the American embassy. And that was quite funny because, I was 24 years old. So it was all very scary. Lots of American soldiers in there with guns, like, and you weren't allowed to take anything. And you couldn't take your phone, your wallet. You had to leave it all in a locker outside. And then you had to sit there for like 3 hours while they processed you. And then I went to the lady in the counter and she said, what are you going to do on a cruise ship? And I said, my goal is to be a cruise director. And she said, like, Julie, because she was American, she was talking about the Love Boat, right? But we don't really. I certainly, as a 24-year-old British person, had never watched The Love Boat in my life. So I thought Julie was just like her friend. So I was like, oh, yeah, maybe I'll meet her. But anyway, it was all fine. They sorted all that out. So by the time I got told I've got the job to me being on a ship, it was like 3 months later. Yeah. But yeah, it was great. And the first place they sent me was Australia. So 24-year-old. I had done a bit of traveling before, but I certainly had never been as far as Australia. So it was all very exciting. And then I got really lucky, which doesn't happen to a lot of people, but I actually joined a ship when it was in dry dock. So I had a week or so of just getting myself familiar and being able to do the trainings without actually having to start work straight away. Because normally, the average person, you start straight away. Like you might have to do the trainings on the side, but you have to get straight into it. So I was quite lucky. And I remember
where were you dry docked?
I think it was Brisbane, but then it moved to Sydney, like whilst I was on it. So it was kind of a bit of both. But I remember I walked onto the ship and it blew my mind. And I didn't even realize I was actually on a small ship. I didn't. I was gobsmacked at how big that was. Right. I walked on the ship and I walked on it was the atrium, and I was like, I was not expecting this. And then you see the theatre, and then I was like, wow, how does this float? It's crazy. And even now I get, you get lots of people who say, oh, I'll never go on a cruise. I don't like to feel claustrophobic, or I don't want to be stuck on a ship. It's not like that at all. Like it genuinely is, especially those big ships, is the size of a village. Like if you plonked a ship in a village in the UK, it would probably cover most of it, right? And also it's like 25 stories high. So yeah, it's huge.
It's hard to get claustrophobic on those things when there's so many places to go. It's like the only time it feels like maybe it could be claustrophobic is when you're trying to get on and off the ship, I imagine.
Yeah, I think there's certainly moments, and I think instead of moments like that, I'd say the moments is when you've got like a lot of days at sea. I think that's what starts driving people a little bit crazy. And I've done everything from repositionings across the Atlantic and Pacific, but also like a world cruise. A world cruise, there's a lot of days at sea.
What's the longest you did in like consecutive days at sea?
13, I think.
13. Goodness me.
13, yeah. So if it's not 13, it's definitely roughly around about that. But I was on a world cruise, and this was not the same time, but it started in Australia. Okay. And that first section when you sort of go through Asia, and then it's from Asia to Europe. That's the bit that's got like a lot of days at sea. And I think there was a port in the middle, but it wasn't one we docked at. It was like a tender port, and it was only for a few hours. But there was no cruise shore leave. So for all intents and purposes, it was another day at sea, right? So only a few guests went off. But yeah, once you get like 3 days in a row, 4 days in a row, it does start to get a bit intense, especially with entertaining guests, because they just get a bit itchy. It's not their fault, but there's lots to do on a ship, but people tend to like do the same thing day after day. And what they really should do is mix it up, right? You really need to like do something completely different every day, and it will, especially when you've got all these days at sea.
We've come a long way since the days when it took us about 6 months to go from Australia to the UK by wooden ship, and how we would have survived then.
Yeah, exactly.
Go back in time. My God. What do you mean there's no Wi-Fi? I can't play Candy Crush.
Sweet. Sugar Crush.
That was the great thing about the world cruise, and I don't think a lot of people appreciate it as much. But when you do a world cruise, because it goes slowly around the world, you actually see that cultures change gradually as you move, like just how people look, the religion that they worship, and the food even. There's a gradual moment. The food gets spicier and spicier, and more Asian, and then less Asian and less spicier. And it's gradual. And I think when we think of cultures that are thousands of miles away, they can sometimes seem so different to what we're used to. But when you do a world cruise, it's like walking around the world, and you gradually see it change. It really sort of brings it all together.
It's a weird
one. Of course, you have to,
because obviously when the temperature go up, you'd think the spice would go down, but it goes up as well.
Yeah. I don't know. I suppose it makes them sweat, cools them down. I don't know. Don't they say that you drink tea in hot weather? I don't do that, but.
No.
But yeah, the only bad thing about that world cruise I remember was we went the wrong direction for the clocks going back and forward. So they were actually going forward, which means we got less sleep every time the clocks changed. So if they should have gone the other way around, that way we would have had an hour back every time. And
everyone would have been a lot more chipper on that cruise.
Yeah. And then, of course, we have to cross the international date line where it changes by like 24 hours.
Oh, yes. So if you're going east to west, then you skip a day. Oh, no. If you're going east to west through the international date line, and you repeat the day that you've just done, and if you're going the opposite direction, and you skip a whole day, right?
I think it's the other way around, but yes, you're right. So one way. So if you're traveling one way, it's different. But if you gain a day on cruise ships, you don't get paid an extra day. They just say, it'll even out over your career. But there's times I had 2 days exactly the same. And I remember not the world cruise, but I remember we had two. It was like February the 8th or something, back to back. And I played a movie up on the open deck as a bit of a joke. Can you guess what it was?
It was what's that Tom Cruise one where he fights the aliens over and over again? Do you know what I mean?
Is that Oblivion or something? I don't know.
No.
It's
Emily Blunt.
But it's like that one.
Yeah, basically.
It's not Oblivion, but
is it like Groundhog Day?
You're close. It's Groundhog Day, yeah. So I played Groundhog Day on February the 8th, but I played it on the 2nd February the 8th as well. And some guests didn't get the joke. They were like, just so you know, you played the same movie twice.
You fucked up, Dan.
What movie? It's the joke. It's Groundhog Day. I didn't change the rest of the schedule, but yeah, just for the joke.
Was there any like really bone-chilling or blood-curdling moments at sea that you've had over the 17 years? Scary moments?
The thing that always seemed to happen to me was I always used to have a lot of medical emergencies happen right in front of me. Like I used to have a bunch of heart attacks and things like that, where, we had to get doctors and nurses there really, really quickly. I remember one happened on a private island that the cruise ship owned. And this was back when I was like assistant cruise director as well. And my job was to be on the island, host the volleyball with one of my colleagues. But what we always used to do is go ashore like an hour before the volleyball and have a couple of beers in the bar that was there, right? Just get us all lubed up and ready to have fun in the sun. Yeah. And we had the beers. And when we were walking to the volleyball, we saw like a bunch of commotion. And some of the musicians on board were actually pulling this lady out of the water. And there was definitely obviously something wrong. You could just tell like the skin color she was, and her eyes were open, but all covered in sand. Like it was not pretty. And we always had a doctor there working, but we had the other doctor was actually off duty and was right next to it. So as I came over, I remember he said like, he saw me and he goes, "Dan, run to the medical tent or whatever and grab." And then he said medical terminology that I don't even know, right? He said, "Grab the," and I was like, "Sorry, what do you need me to grab?" And he just went, "Oxygen tank." And I was, okay, I understand that. So I ran. I don't know if you had to run on sand, but running on sand is awful, right? I'm not particularly fit, and I just had a couple of beers in the hot sun. But in my head, I was like, if I don't run as fast as I possibly can, and it doesn't work out well for this lady, I don't know how I'm going to feel, right? But I just knew I had to run as fast as I could. So I ran all the way there. Luckily, when I got there, because of radios, they kind of knew that that's what I was going for. So the security officer was already there with the oxygen tank, which wasn't like a small thing. It was like large. It was like 5 feet on wheels, which means nothing in the sand anyway. So I picked it up and ran back. By the time I got back to the lady, I needed the oxygen tank for myself. But actually, it all panned out all right. I didn't think so at the time, because the whole scenario, I was still there for like 20, 25 minutes, and she was still having CPR and all of this sort of stuff. What it turned out happened was that she was snorkeling and had a heart attack in the water. And then because she was snorkeling and already face down, people didn't notice. Like her family didn't notice straight away. They just noticed that, oh, now she's suddenly bumping into people or whatever. So she essentially had a heart attack and was drowning. And after 25 minutes, because we were part of our job as entertainers is crowd control, I then had to I turned to everybody that was watching, and there was like 100 people there. And, another one of my bugbears we can talk about is how many people just like to film this stuff and how mad I get when they're doing this. And it's just like, just go away. But I just said to them, I was like, okay, folks, there's nothing left to see here. And then they started disappearing. As it turned out, they actually put her in the back of a truck. There was no real big hospital in this place. So they took her back on board the ship where there was a better medical center. And then they helicoptered her to another island where there's a bigger hospital. And she actually apparently made a full recovery. So, yeah, I mean, that was incredible. So it actually worked out fine in the end. But I've had that situation or similar situation, I'd probably say like 10 times.
Wow.
And because of that, I've kind of got used to what we're supposed to do and things to look out for.
And so your running time with the oxygen tanks improved now then?
I wouldn't say that, no, for sure. But I actually I ended up winning the Employee of the Month for that, because even though it wasn't necessarily just me that had anything to do with any of that, I think because it was so far out of my normal position of being an entertainer, and then essentially just being the doctor's improv assistant while I was there. I just got nominated for it and then ended up winning. So yeah, it's a nice little reward.
Yeah.
I've had times where I'm trying to help someone who's obviously in dire need of medical assistance. And then I have someone else who doesn't even know this person shouting at me, about something, but annoyed that they have to move away from the bar that we're sat at or something like that. And my rule, generally speaking, was when there's something like life involved, then my customer service badge gets flicked off. To an extent, I'm not throwing people out of table. But I remember there was one time there was a heart attack in the dining room, and like I said, it's not normally part of my job, but in that particular instance, there was a few management positions that weren't on board. So I felt the need, okay, I'm going to go and, I'm not going to necessarily do the medical stuff, but I'll make sure that everything else is okay. And I ran to the dining room and the waiters are like, it's over there, but just so you know, there's this couple that are refusing to move. And I was like, no problem, I've got it. So I run over and the whole area has been cleared. And there is essentially what looks like a dead body on the floor, obviously someone in a medical emergency, and I think they did end up okay. But it's important to the story because right next to them was this couple that were refusing to move. And I went over and I said, sorry guys, you're going to have to jump away. And the lady was like, but we've ordered our food. What's going to happen? And I was like, these people will help you get your food. I pointed at the waiters, but you need to move now. And she's like, this is ridiculous. And I was like, ma'am, there is literally a body on the floor next to you, like so close that even if she moved her chair too far back, she would have hit it. Like, who wants to even be in that situation? Like, but with the crisis training, I just know it's how people don't react well. You know what I mean? Sometimes they're not thinking straight. And I know it wasn't necessarily because this lady was a bad person or the couple were bad people or anything like that. They just they don't think straight. And sometimes it requires just someone with authority. And I had the officer stripes on to be able to say no, move, and then they just do it, right? So
wow, that's brilliant. I can't believe they had the audacity.
It happens a lot.
The audacity to still be like, no, I've ordered my food. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to eat.
Yeah.
So what if there's a person on the floor right next to me?
And I had someone collapsed on the jogging track. It was more of an accident than a heart attack or anything like that, but they were in need of assistance. And someone told me, I was quite far away, I was halfway down the ship. Someone told me about it, so I was running there. And on my run there, I got stopped 5 more times by people wanting to tell me exactly the same thing. But as I'm clearly running there, people are like, stop. And I'm like, what? And they're like, there's somebody up there. And I'm like, yes, I know, I'm going that way now. And I'd run another 5 feet and they're like, Dan, stop. And then tell me again. And
everyone wants to be. It's a bit like here in the real world when you hear of like a celebrity who's died or a natural disaster's broke out, you want to immediately send that link to that story to a friend so that you could be like, I was the first person to tell them that news. Yeah. At sea, it's the same. Like, stop! I must tell you this news. I want to be the first person to tell you, so I can be kind of like, I was a journalist for a split second.
We had a helicopter evacuation, so someone on a stretcher.
Oh God.
And as it turned out, so we had a special elevator that was used for that. And as it turned out, chain of unfortunate events, that elevator wasn't working, which is not a problem. You just use another elevator. And you maybe have to add a stairwell or something that you wouldn't normally have to. But because of it, we now had to take this stretcher through a group of guests that were on the open deck. And I would say there was like 100 people there. And, we cleared out where we could. We made like a pathway. But as we took this stretcher up, and I'm there with my walkie-talkie and my officer's uniform, I'd say nearly all of them, like 70 to 80%, are just there filming this guy who's obviously in a clearly vulnerable position. He's got all the medical equipment attached to him. He's not doing well. He's doing so badly he needs to get helicoptered off, which costs $100,000. But they're just there filming. And I remember I got so mad, and maybe I don't have the right to get mad. Maybe I don't, but I didn't think it mattered so much. And everyone that was filming, I just kept saying to them, show some respect, show some privacy, show this man some privacy and things. And I went to the captain afterwards and I just said, hey, listen, just so you know, I probably shouted at a few people that were filming, and he was like, I don't care, that's fine. But hopefully those people would have gone home, like you say, to show their friends and family and said, hey, look what we saw. And hopefully someone in their family has gone, that officer that shouted at you is right. You should not have been filming that. You know what I mean? That's what I'd like to think was going to happen anyway. So,
well, you can shout. This is in a way your way of shouting back at them, Dan.
Yeah. Well, in a way, but as I said, I genuinely don't believe it's anyone's particular fault. I just feel like in moments of crisis, there does need to be an authority figure who needs to tell people what to do, very black and white. And that's when sometimes the customer service can just be put to the side for a minute. 5 minutes later, an hour later, I'm back on stage and I'm telling jokes and I'm enjoying it, and everyone's enjoying it, and we're all having a great time. But in those moments, if I could shake people and say, "Stop it, move," I'd love to do that.
100% agree with you.
I did enjoy the pirate training. When we had to go through the Suez Canal and we had to do the pirate drill, because we have to get all guests involved as well, which is
I've never heard of this. What's the pirate drill? The pirate training?
So it's kind of like a normal drill, but instead of the guests going down to the muster stations, they actually have to stay in their corridors or in their rooms. If their room doesn't have a window, they can stay in their room. But if they're, they're certainly not allowed out on balconies and things like that. But yeah, and then the ship themselves, some of them anyway, have LRADs. Have you heard of it?
That rings a bell.
So LRAD is it's like a sound cannon. So it's kind of like,
yes,
it's like our attack back, right? But obviously it's not lethal or anything. It's just like makes a very loud, annoying siren, which I imagine if you were close enough or it was aimed right at you, might even perforate your eardrums or something. But yeah, people have to get on those and get themselves ready. But to be honest, I don't think pirates have really been active even in Somalia for a long time. And I don't think cruise ships are what they're after. Like, we find it difficult enough to control 3,000 guests. I don't think 12 pirates are going to be able to do it. they're after the cargo ships, with the Ferraris and stuff, right? But yeah.
Well, because you've been doing it for as long as you have, the pirates have learned over time that it's not a good idea to attack cruise ships. But back in the day when you first started, maybe there'd have been a couple of incidents. I don't know.
We did have a suspected one, but this was actually in Asia, not Somalia, where there was a Mayday signal that the ship had to go to. You have to go to a Mayday signal as part of the law. And this could have all been hearsay. This happened at 2:00 in the morning, and I heard from someone who worked on the bridge or whatever. And they said when they turned up to the Mayday signal, there was 12 fishing boats, and as soon as a cruise ship turned up, they all sped away in different directions. So their theory, allegedly, was a potential attack. Yeah. Or wanting to be an attack. Yeah. I don't know how true that is, but yeah.
Ooh. Yeah, well, you'll never know, because you can't go after them and ask them. If they see in this show, please leave a comment at the bottom saying, yeah, that was suspected. That was us. That was us. That was
if they're watching this on their stolen, pirated TVs.
Yes. Please let us know, just for closure's sake.
Yeah. I got a message from Jack Sparrow. Yeah, he said it was him. Yeah.
Oh, good old Jack. He's
yeah.
back from the depths of Davy Jones' locker, finally. What about, so speaking of Jack Sparrow, did Johnny Depp, obviously very famous man, did you meet any celebrities during your time at sea?
I was quite lucky to meet a few. I wouldn't say A-list. As a general rule, there's a couple of times we had some particular cruises or whatever where we would have maybe some singers that were more famous 10, 20 years ago. But the biggest celebrity I think that I met, and when I say met, I really did spend a lot of time. I went out for dinner with his family multiple times. We went for drinks. He apparently seemed to love me. And when I had some surgery like a year afterwards, he even sent me a message on Instagram. So I was like, oh, not only is this celebrity big, but he does seem to at least want to continue contact to some extent. And that celebrity was Philip Schofield. So it was a little bit before all of the controversy of Philip, but
sorry, I just had to say,
I'll go on record and say I really loved him.
Oh yeah, I just had to say, as soon as you said Philip, I did raise my eyes for the people that are just listening to the audio. And for those who do not know Philip Schofield, there's been a lot of stuff in him. Basically, he's been cancelled because of some inappropriate dealings with underage same-sex minors, and he's a married man with children for some time.
I'm a bit more, because I've met him and, I liked it. I loved him and his family, and I thought they were great. And whatever happened afterwards was, super unfortunate. Especially
what was he on board for?
And stuff. And so he was creating a commercial,
right,
for us. So there was some filming involved, and they were doing some certain things. And because he works on This Morning. But if you remember, they never worked the Fridays. So he just came on from Friday to Sunday. And then had to go back to work for the Monday. So it's like a little bit of extra work for him. And and like I said, it was before anything happened. So, I met his whole family and they were great. Yeah. And then I'm also very good friends with Paul Borrell, who also came on to do a very similar thing, who is Princess Diana's former butler.
Yeah.
So he's also had some connections and filming and things to do. And we invited him to our wedding. He didn't come, but we did invite him to our wedding.
What did Burrell get in trouble for? Was it just revealing secrets about stuff at the palace?
That's what they say. But I mean, I don't really know too much about it. I think you get the impression I'm not really that much into TV or pop culture or whatever. But no, yeah, he had some controversy. I think probably people didn't appreciate him writing a book and things like that. But of course, he's going to write a book. He's the butler of Princess Diana. Of course, he's going to share his stories and things like
Yeah.
that. I've met the original drummer of the Beatles, so that is also potentially for some people probably the biggest celebrity. His name was Pete Best, and I had to do an interview with him and chat about that. Very interesting story, but because a lot of people don't realize that Ringo wasn't the original drummer because that's after they became famous. That's what we know.
Pete was with them
so for some
before they
people, that
started.
probably is the biggest. Yeah, so when they were, I think for the first album or two, when they were a little bit more locally famous, so certainly before they went over to the States. But yeah, when he was telling me, they were performing all over Europe at that time, and then it's quite a sad story because he still doesn't really know why he got kicked out. So it was quite a sad story. But he's actually not done too bad from it because I think there was some eventual payment they had to do where it's actually his drumming on one of their albums.
Yeah, of course. He'd have to get some royalties.
So he ended up getting something out of it for sure, yeah. But him and his brother are actually very successful, both drummers, and they both came on. I think his brother's kind of like his manager as well. But yeah, they had a great, interesting story to tell, and I just remember it was awful because it was such a cool story, and then towards the end, it's obviously very solemn, and he shares his story about how he doesn't know he got kicked out, and some people I imagine were probably really feeling for him. And then I said, "Is there any questions from the crowd?" And then this lady put her hand up and says, "Yeah, I want to know, did he ever meet Ringo Starr? Because he's my favorite." And I'm like, that's not the best question.
The man who replaced you. Yeah, he's my favorite. Oh, yeah. Were there any forbidden romances that you've ever experienced?
No, well, certainly not me. No, I was actually fairly good on ships. My relationships were long term and very steady, like on board. But certainly, there's definitely characters out there that different port, different relationship, or whatever. And yeah, there's certainly rumors and things of people hooking up who probably shouldn't, and also cruise ships they do attract a certain type of person that they might be married at home or something, and then they have dreams or wishes to sort of play away a little bit, and lots of broken hearts on various different things, and sometimes it's a cultural thing as well, like not to be rude, but sometimes it's certain nationalities that are a lot more womanizing than others. But yeah, for me personally, I was a lot more of a good boy.
Well, in your experience, which nationalities are the ones that go a little bit further?
Well, I wouldn't want to say, but because certainly there's people.
You're not naming anyone in particular, but you can name a nationality.
Yeah, but certainly the countries around the Mediterranean where they're a little bit more, they're good looking guys. They have the opportunities, and sometimes they cash in. That's all I'm saying. If I was from the Mediterranean, I'd be cashing in as well, but. Currently, I'm a Ricky Gervais that you buy off Temu, or that's it.
That's good. That's very good. Have you done many charter cruises?
Not many where we've had a full ship charter. I've done plenty where we've had massive groups. We've had the Bears on. Have you ever had the Bears?
What's the Bears? Like the is it like a football team or something?
You're definitely going to get this wrong. Bears is a particular body type that is prevalent in the homosexual community. So it's a gay cruise, but specifically for the bigger guys that are a bit hairier and
right, and
a lot more fun-loving. To be honest, I loved them. They were like the best. It was such a fun cruise. They had their own host and everything, but they got me involved a little bit to have a bit of banter with their host or to do some games or things like that. There's a company in the UK called Imagine Cruises, and they are great. They book some big entertainment, but then what they do is then they sell the tickets for the ship itself. So they're kind of like a cruise line without their own ships. They just rent yours. I loved working with them. I worked with them like 2 or 3 times, but I don't know how they do it. But they book like their big acts. So they've probably got like Russell Watson and some other operatic acts and things like that. But they find the craziest fans of these celebrities to be on the ship. It was so crazy that we always have to like close the doors of the theater, and then we by our watch we have to be like, right, the doors open in 30 seconds time, and you open the doors and there's people running through to get the best seats. They're like elbowing each other out of the way. Like, this doesn't happen on a normal cruise, but
No.
And some of them are a bit older, right? Some of them have got wheelchairs and they're like zooming, barging past people, like to get the best seat in the house to see their favorite celebrity that was on. But yeah, they Imagine cruises. They're always exciting events for sure. Yeah.
I can imagine though, like if you're like a super fan of someone and they're performing on a ship and you get the chance to go on that ship and be like right there up against like the front of the thing. And then after they performed, you're like, well, they're still on the ship. They haven't gone anywhere. That must tingle your excitement kind of off the chart, because you're just like, I've got to find them.
They do, and they go hunting for them. They really do. They go hunting.
Yeah, of course they do.
And I won't say who this lady is, partly because I can't really remember her exact name, but also it doesn't put her in the best light. But there's a very famous female opera singer from the UK, and when she was on board, like, I'm used to dealing with divas, right? I'm used to dealing with entertainment staff and things.
Fine.
This was other level and worthy. She's very talented and she's worth millions. So, she's been paid for it. But she was so diva-y that we were all told, you're not allowed to look at her in the eyes, right?
Come on.
Let alone speak to her. Like, no chance. Like, if you work for the ship, even if you've got an officer uniform or anything, you can't even look at her. And then my job was, when she was going from her room to backstage or room to the show, I had to run around and close all the fire screen doors so that no one could see her. Like, so they'd on the radio, they'd be like, she's approaching corridor 4, and I'd be like, quickly close the doors, and then she comes through. I was like, this is crazy. And then she had the audacity on stage. So on stage, she was like, so I walked around the ship today and I spoke to lots of you lovely people. I was like, did you?
No,
F?
you didn't.
No, you didn't. You didn't leave your suite that we've put you in. But anyway, like I said, definitely deserves. She's worth millions. She's very talented. But yeah, it'd be nice to have a little bit more. Be a little bit more friendlier than that.
I guess I should just say, like, obviously, for those listening, we don't actually know each other, and I've interviewed a lot of people that I used to work with, but there's been a couple that I've been in touch with over the social medias, people that have been following the podcast, which is still relatively new. So you're one of the fewer people who I don't actually know, because I called in a lot of favors from people I used to work with from all different departments. But as you know, Dan, when you're interviewing or being interviewed with people that you do or you don't know, it's it's always about building that rapport and getting the best out of somebody's story-wise. And I've got a bunch of leading questions. I don't know you personally, so I don't know stories that you might have specifically. And my questions, can be a bit formulaic, but it's the best I've got. So for this section, rather than me asking you another sort of, question starter, was there a particular story that you personally wanted to get off your chest?
Well,
one of your hits.
In one of your example questions, you asked what was the most embarrassing thing that happened.
I didn't ask you that question. Yes. Okay. Well, some are less inclined to want to answer that question. But
I remember I was like, I don't think anything embarrassing has happened to me, because I don't get embarrassed very often. And I was like, and then I remembered something that just emptied my soul. And I was like, if you ask it, I have to tell it. Part of it is for it to get it off my chest, but it really doesn't put me in a good light. And and it's an awful story.
I'm not twisting your arm to tell it, Dan, but hey, if you want to get it off your chest.
But I thought about this. So when I was just one of the entertainment hosts, we used to do country and western hoedown, and I used to hate the costumes that they provided for us. There wasn't anything offensive with them. They were just very boring. So I bought my own, and I like to be extreme. I like to be more dressed up than any of the guests. So I had this giant cowboy hat, which was ridiculously big. I had these big horns on it, and I had this fake mustache. I wore these sunglasses. And what I noticed is, when I was introducing people into the theater, a lot of the time, because of this getup that I was wearing. They didn't realize that I was real. They thought I was like a mannequin. And I would scare them a little bit, right? So I lent into it. I played on it because it used to make people laugh so much. I even stood in a position to make myself look like a mannequin. And as they're walking in, I would just go, yeah, like really loud, right? Like, so people, like, yeah. And then they'd laugh and they'd take their seat. Oh, it's Dan. And then what I always used to do was scare all these people coming in the top floor of the theatre. And then the joke is that I'd go down to the lower floor where no one has walked past me previously. And then I'd scare some people like behind them. Oh, and everyone in the top row would laugh because they've just had a whole like session with it. I really don't know if I should be telling this story. But I used to do it every week and it was fine. And then the last week I did it, and this is the reason why it was the last week, I snuck down into like the lower part. And it was perfect. There was just a girl sat there by herself. And I was like, I'm just going to scare her and everyone up there is going to laugh. And when I say scare, it wasn't even that bad. Like I just used to shout yeehaw, right? Like I wasn't like grabbing people or like, I wasn't dressed like a demon or anything. I was just a cowboy.
Well, like, did you ever see the music video We're Known as Big Brown Beaver by Primus?
No, I don't think I saw that.
Oh, well, that's pretty scary. They're like porcelain cowboys.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine that would be scary. Yeah. So I went behind this girl, and like I said, I wasn't like super close, but I was close enough that when I shouted yeehaw, she was obviously going to jump a little bit and see what it was. And because I approached her from behind, when she turned around, I then realized straight away that she unfortunately had she had Down syndrome, so it really felt like I was picking on her, and my soul just left my body. Right, like everyone up in the crowd, there was still some people laughed who didn't realize the situation, but what happened was awful, right? And straight away I said, oh, sorry, did I scare you? And she said yes, like, very matter of factly. And I was like, really, really sorry. And then I went back into the office. I took the cowboy hat and the mustache off, and then when her family came back, I went over and I introduced myself, and I actually recovered in a sense because I made them laugh, and then she ended up becoming like a big fan of mine for the rest of the cruise, overall, I recovered from it. But yeah, it was from that moment onwards that I was like, I am never, ever doing that again. I'm never doing the scared joke. I'm never doing anything like that. It's like that one moment that every man has in their life is when you ask a lady, or when's the baby due, and they're not pregnant, and then you say to yourself, I'm never going to ask, even if someone is clearly pregnant, I'm never going to ask when's the baby due, even if they look like they're ready to pop, because it's not worth it. I'm that clean cut comedian. I on stage, I really try and make sure that I don't offend anybody in any direction, and I'm not doing anything that's going to upset anybody. And it is possible to be like that. It obviously gets harder. You can't necessarily say a lot of things that you could do like years ago, but yeah, certainly I try and make sure that I'm that sort of comedian where people are quite happy to bring their 5-year-old kids to watch me perform on stage if they need to.
That whole scenario with the jump scare, that just reminded me of the Will from The Inbetweeners when he gets on the front row of the roller coaster. And have you seen that? These inconsiderate
this was exactly what it was. It was the real moment of cringe comedy. It was when we watch all that The Office, Modern Family, all that sort of the cringiness that happens. That's exactly what happened to me. And like I said, I don't even know what color I went, but I definitely didn't stay this color. I either went bright red, I went pale white, blue, purple. I don't know what happened, but from that moment, like, everything left my body. Like, I felt it. It was awful. It was the worst thing that's ever happened to me on a ship, and in the embarrassing sense, for sure.
And well, the embarrassing sense is always going to be very self-deprecating to you. But so fling it back the other way, Dan, and get not off your chest, but like have a moment of, like, you say you don't want to offend anyone, but surely there's been a guest over the 17 years that's almost offended you, not just because they were filming something, but they asked you a ridiculously personal question, they had a completely ridiculously obnoxious request or a complaint, something that stands out for you. What would that be?
Hundreds. There's so many. But well, the thing is, when you're an entertainer, the reason why we're entertainers is because you want everybody to like you. Like there's no hiding from the fact that we enjoy being the center of attention, and we're striving for that clarification that we're funny on stage, or we're talented, or people are laughing at us, whatever it is, right? So when you don't have that effect on someone, even if you're not in the wrong and they are, it can still break your heart a little bit. I remember
for the audio listeners that benefit, Dan, I just wanted to say I am sadly nodding along to everything Dan is saying.
Yeah. I had this, I think I want to say they were German. I didn't sort of stick around too long to ask, but certainly by their accent. And, but yeah, I remember I was cruise director and I thought everything was going great. I was having so many compliments. Everyone's enjoying everything. People were getting me to go for dinner with them and have photos with them. And then this couple came over and they're like, the man was like, can I went to a German accent. I'm terrible at accents.
Oh, go on.
In a German accent, he said, can I tell you something? And I was like, yeah, oh yeah. And I've said it with a smile on my face. I'm like, absolutely. Yeah. I don't mind. Yeah. And he says, I don't like you like that. And I was like, oh, why? And he's like, I just don't like you. I think you're not nice.
So German.
And I was like, and then I wanted to follow it up, but then he then I suppose this shows that he was probably particularly rude. But I sort of said, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. And as I'm saying it, he just turned his back and walks away. And I was like, what happened? I don't know what I did, and I wouldn't have minded the feedback, and I certainly would have. It broke my heart that he felt that way. But some of the funny complaints that I've had over the years. I remember the first contract that I had when I didn't really know that much stuff. I had, when we do the tender operation where you take people ashore in boats, we were doing that, and it was like one of my first times doing it. I don't know the answer to everything. And this gentleman came over, and he was British, but as I said, in Australia, because that's where we were. But he came over, and he's complaining about how long he's waiting for the these shuttles to take you ashore. And I don't know how long it's supposed to be. Like for me, it's only been it's a 20-minute wait. It doesn't seem like that much to me, but maybe they're used to it being a bit quicker. So I'm like, oh, okay. I'm giving him all the customer service, but then he keeps coming back. And it almost starts turning into harassment a little bit, right? Because he's only focused on me. There's multiple people there, but he keeps coming to me, and it's all I'm doing is handing out tickets. But apparently, he focused that it was all my fault. And he comes over and he's like, why aren't they using all the boats? They should be using all the boats. I don't know the answer. I'm like, I didn't realize there's actually, lifeboats are different from the tender boats. I didn't realize this. Yeah. And then the icing on the cake for me is after he's already given me a lot of grief, and I'm trying to kill him back with kindness. Mm-hmm. Is he comes up to me and he says, I just found out how I can go ashore straight away. And I said, you did? And he goes, yeah, I just started shouting at the lady who's collecting the tickets, and she told me I could go straight on a boat. And bear in mind, this is 3 floors down. So I was like, so why are you still here?
What did you come back to tell me this?
And then he just goes, I shouldn't have to complain to get what I want. And then at that point is when I said, sir, I think we've gone past the point where I could possibly help you, where you felt necessary so much to come and complain to me that the very thing you wanted was to go ashore, and someone gave that to you, but you were more inclined to walk back up 3 floors to come and shout at me for the final time. So I was like, wow. What could I possibly do? Someone gave him what he wanted, and it wasn't. But that's just.
You should have said, Dan, sir, can I tell you something? I don't like you.
Yeah, and the thing is 99.9% of the time the guests are lovely, and and when you get these moments, I still enjoy it because it makes a good story for the crew bar. It gives me this, like I said, this was 17 years ago, and I still remember this gentleman. I remember exactly what he looks like, and. Yeah, it was fine. You know what I mean? And that was my insight into what guests can be like. It can be like.
Go and enjoy your excursions. Just get off. Go and do the thing that you've booked to go and do. Well, speaking of excursions, did you do any memorable ones for the right or wrong reasons?
Yeah, I mean, my job was busy. Was a bit more busier than some people are super lucky they get to go on excursions every day if you're a dancer on board or someone that only works the nighttime. But as cruise director, there's a lot of stuff to do in the daytime. But most of the excursions that I did seemed to center around animals. I just, I'm not a big fan of beaches for a start. if I go to a beach, I'm normally the guy that just sits at the bar, don't go in the water or anything. But I love seeing different animals, and I've been to Stingray City in, I think it's Grand Cayman, where there's just hundreds of stingrays that you get to swim with, and it's scary when you first get in the water. But I think my most favorite was sled dogging on a glacier in Alaska. So you get a helicopter up to the glacier. There's a camp up there. The dog sled ride is like 10 minutes. Is it called
sled dogging, or is it dog sledding?
Sled, I think it's sled dogging or mushing, they call it in Alaska. Mushing.
I think it's dog sledding.
I don't know. But
you can't be calling it sled dogging.
Well, it definitely had a sled and had a dog. But it didn't have people filming you in a dark car park. So
sorry.
Yeah, that was fun, and also you get to hang out with the puppies, the husky puppies that are going to be the sled dogs next year. So yeah, I think that was super memorable for me, and that was super great.
Did you ever miss the ship?
No, I was very much a good boy. I was never that person that went ashore as soon as we docked and came back like a minute before we left. I was the sort of person that goes ashore for like 2-3 hours, go get some lunch, have a couple of beers, do what I need to do, and then get back on board. Like, rest time for me was huge. Having an afternoon nap was way more important.
Yeah. And I guess then for you, as you're still working in the industry, if you'd admitted that you'd missed the ship, no company would hire you.
Yeah. I mean, they say you get one chance. They say you get if you miss a ship once, that's fine. After that, you're gone. But no, I never even cut it close. I think it accidentally got cut close for me once when, because some captains, when everybody's on board, they want to leave early.
Yeah.
And if it means that there's a couple of crew members especially ashore, then they might even make a decision to leave. And that sort of happened to me, but luckily they stayed. So I think I thought I had an hour left, but actually they were in talks about leaving early, and I got back in time. But yeah, it was okay.
Did they want to leave early for a specific reason, like just to try to make up some extra time?
Yeah, it's normally when there's time to make up, or if they know the weather's going to be a bit bad, or if the weather's going to turn, if the wind's going to keep the ship in the dock, or it's going to be a bit trickier, then they might want to go.
I guess so. But they don't really, captains don't make money from the guests, right? Their job is not in a cruise director sense. You can make bonuses from selling them on different things.
Right, yeah.
Right. A captain isn't going to make money creaming sort of money off the top of the casino or something.
Not the casino, but I think they do get bonuses for saving fuel and things like that, right? So So there's certain things that they can do to make sure they're not over expending, right? So I think they don't try and cut costs, but they just try and stay within what the cost should be without wasting money by pumping all the engines on when they don't need to be on and all of that sort of stuff.
Speaking of sneaky side hustles, did you have any yourself, or see any that shouldn't have been?
No, but I've had plenty of haircuts on the I-95, the M1. There's so many on it. It's such a strange thing that happened. When I first started, as you say, in our time, there was so much going on. You could get secret noodles from from the guys in the incinerator room, the garbage room. They would provide you with noodles, which seemed fine at the time. And then there was also people selling their hard drives, which were filled with movies or music and things like that you could then copy. But before we had an official shop on board, the shop itself just used to be a couple of the laundry guys in a cupboard, and they would be selling toothpaste and chips and dips and things like that, and just pocketing the money. It was allowed. It's not like it wasn't not allowed. And actually, as the ships got more modernized and new ones were built, then they actually started putting in barber shops for them to use. So if you did want to, if you wanted to be a hairdresser on the side, there was actually a room that you could use that wasn't you just in the middle of a corridor with a mirror Velcro to the wall, right? So they did make it a bit better. In some ways they made it better. In other ways, I think when some cruise lines saw how much money they could make from selling stuff to the crew, so they took the shop away from those laundry guys and they made their own. It made probably better stuff. It probably made better products that we can buy, but someone else was making the money instead.
Well, because I know obviously there's times of the week or whatever it is that they will sell things like booze and fags to the crew at a sort of a cheaper rate than anything, because it's maritime savings.
It gradually went up though. When I first started, I did go to the crew bar probably a lot more frequently than I did when I was in my 30s. And I was amazed that, having a beer for like $1, a packet of
Yeah.
cigarettes for like $1.50, but it gradually went up a little bit. And actually cruise lines, in some ways it's sad because, I remember all those times as really good times. But now the rules that they have where, people can only have like one beer a night or they can only buy one at a time. It's created these big long lines in the crew bar. Even if you wanted to go over just water, like you have to stand there for 40 minutes to wait to get served. And the general attitude has gone down a little bit. But I also think it's the generation that's coming in are not necessarily as crazy as the millennials that we were, right? The ones that were like, yeah, we can drink till 2 o'clock in the morning.
They don't drink as much. You're right.
8 o'clock in the morning. It was part and parcel of the whole experience was to essentially be a lot more crazy than you are at home. Like I think there was times where I couldn't remember the last time I didn't have a drink in an evening, right? There was, and sometimes that would last for weeks. And to think about that now, it's crazy. Like, even if I have 2 beers, I'm probably going to have to spend an extra hour in bed the next following day, right? But back then, like it was, you're in your 20s, you're going out, you're having fun, and who's to stop you? The drinks are $1 each, like easy.
But that is extremely, like, what you're saying is right. Like we would burn the candle at both ends. We'd stay up ridiculously late, and we would have to get up really early for embarkation, and we would do everything we could to, like, eye drops in to make your eyes less red. You'd scrape your tongue to make sure it had no residue of alcohol on it.
I remember it was Christmas Day on my first contract, and the doctor was playing Santa Claus, but the doctor decided he didn't want to do it anymore in the evening, so they asked me if I could do it, so I was like, fine. So I put the costume on, but I thought if I'm going to do it, I'm still going to enjoy my Christmas Day. So I kept in between walking around, I'd sneak back down to the crew bar and socialize for a little bit. And I remember I saw this family. It was like a mum and two young boys, and like the older of the two boys ran over to me and gave me a hug as Santa Claus, and then turned to his mum and said, "Mum, why does Santa smell like cigarettes and beer?" And I was like, "That's time for me to leave there, boy." Ho, ho, ho. As it turned out, I knew the kids, and the kid was actually a cheeky kid. Like he knew what he was doing. Like it wasn't.
He was big.
Yeah. He was like a cheeky 8-year-old. But yeah, it's certainly time for me to hang the red coat back up.
Have you ever had the show from hell?
I had a piano player on board the ship. The piano player plays every night in the piano lounge, but they normally do a big show, which they advertise all cruise long. And I didn't mind this piano player, but we had just been to Colombia. And I remember the deputy cruise director called me. I was cruise director. He called me. He says, "You need to come to the lounge where the show is." He says, "It's bad." So I was like, I come along and I'm watching. And yeah, this piano player had obviously enjoyed himself a little bit too much in Colombia. And you could tell by the way he was acting, the way he was singing, what he was doing. Like he was trying to do those piano tricks where you stand on the piano or you're playing it backwards and things like that, but he kept falling off. And apparently, I had it recorded, so I had to watch it afterwards. But he said things like, "Oh, we're in Colombia today. Did anyone buy any white powder ashore?" and things like that. And I'm like, this is a professional cruise line, right? Like this is not the clientele.
And he wasn't even trying to be funny with it. He was just being straight up.
I think he was trying to be funny, but I think he was trying to be funny, but it wasn't funny, right? Like he clearly was inebriated in whatever manner it was. And that was the only show I remember that I've ever put the curtain down on. So normally if there's a bad show, I'd at least let it get to the end and let people complain about it afterwards, or, sometimes it is what it is. You get someone who doesn't have a good show. But this was the only one where he was halfway through a song and I literally put my finger on the button and the curtain just comes down. And as it does, he's like playing it, trying to duck his head under the curtain, like wondering what the hell's going on. And then afterwards I was like, "You need to see me in my office like tomorrow, but right now you need to like disappear, go to bed."
As you say, you'd had too much fun. Well, if there's anything else you'd like to add, now's the time.
Oh, there was one story. I remember I was walking back to my room after working, and ahead of me was this old couple. Like there was an older lady and a much older man who had like a Zimmer frame and was going very slowly. But as I'm looking ahead, they're going into the crew area where I live. Like they're walking into that area. So I start running ahead a little bit because normally what happens is you catch up with them and you say, hey, sorry, this is the crew area. Where do you need to be? Let me take you there, right? And then it's normally fine. But what happened in this scenario was I ran in and I say exactly that. And this lady is acting very erratically. She's an old lady, if you can get it in your head. And the husband just seems very confused. He's like, come on, dear, like, you know, and she looks at me like mean. She's angry at something. And she's like, I want my Johnny Walker. And I'm like, okay, all right, this is a little odd. She doesn't look like she would be the traditional alcoholic or someone who had been drinking all night. Yeah. She looks really mean. And she's like huffing and puffing and she's not liking any answer I give. And I'm trying to be like, hey, come with me. And then randomly out of the blue, she decides to take her sweater off. And underneath there's nothing, right? So it's just an old lady now, completely topless, and her very confused husband. And now I'm thinking, oh, I think I'm dealing with maybe some sort of mental problem here. Like maybe it's dementia or something. I'm not sure, right? I'm not a qualified professional, but whatever's going on here is not good. And then she sort of like puts the sweater back on, but it's now inside out and upside down or whatever. And I was really confused. I eventually managed to get them out the corridor, but I'm stuck by myself. So I see this musician coming towards me. So I say to him, mate, call for help. Like I need the night manager here, like to come and help with this. And then the night manager comes up as I'm trying to find their room where they need to go. And then the night manager sees them as like, it's these people again, as in something else has happened before. But the reason why I wanted to tell you the story is because the next day I see her. And since then, in that nighttime, they've taken her down to medical. They've done what they needed to do there, you know. And I'm thinking the story is her family have sent her here without the due process or care that she probably needs. But it didn't turn out to be that at all. She didn't recognize me the next day. I said hello to her. She was like, "Oh, hello, dear. Nice to meet you." Like completely normal. What it turned out to be that the medical team found was, you know, those little stickers that people put behind their ears for seasickness.
Stickers.
So yeah, they kind of look like band-aids, like plasters, right? But they're circular.
I think I've heard of those before, Dan.
So you'll probably, if you go on a cruise ship, you'll probably see a lot of them, but they are illegal everywhere except for the United States of America. So it has to be like an American cruise, right?
Okay.
But they're like seasickness things that you put there. And I thought it was like a placebo thing or whatever, but apparently it's not. They're an actual drug that like put something into your bloodstream when you do it, right? And the reason why they're illegal everywhere else, they're even illegal in Canada, I think, but the reason why they're illegal is because there's like a 1% chance that it can make you a bit loopy. And that's exactly what happened to her. Like she had what she thought was just going to keep her safe from seasickness, and she completely changed to a really different person. So yeah, if anyone's listening to this from America, don't bother with those things. Just get like the little wristbands, or you know, just make sure your stomach is full, or you eat some ginger or something. But yeah, don't get those stickers for sure.
There might be some people that would have taken that story and been like, "Well, I've got to get me some of those."
Yeah, well, maybe that's what people want to do. Like come into the crew area and whip their top off. If that's your thing, go get them.
Well, that brings us right up towards pretty much 2.5 minutes left. So I just want to say that's basically a wrap, Dan, and you've been very entertaining to listen to with all your stories from over the last 17 years. I want to wish you first and foremost all the best of luck in terms of your upcoming endeavors regarding getting re-employed. I'm sure it'll be fine, Dan. You've not said anything to incriminate yourself and shoot yourself.
It depends how you edit it. If anyone's watching this and I say something incriminating, it's because Sam's edited it that way, and I'm not actually me. I'm an AI version of me.
He's just a Timu Ricky Gervais who's pissed off because he's a Timu Ricky Gervais. No, I'll do a favourable edit, Dan. Always do.
Yeah, great.
Always great. Great to meet you, buddy.
Yeah. Okay.
All the best, Dan. Thanks again for coming on, and I'll see you again. Thanks again.
Thank you, Sam. See you soon, mate.
Bye-bye. All the best.
Bye.
So there you have it. That wraps it up for this episode of DeckTales. I hope you enjoyed it. If you've been entertained by the tales of laughter, camaraderie, and the occasional stormy sea, then don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Your feedback helps us to navigate the podcasting waters and continue bringing you these fascinating stories. Before I sign off, if you'd like to share your own stories for future episodes, then I'd love to hear from you. Simply get in touch over the socials, because after all, the best stories often come from our listeners. As we navigate through the waters of life, remember to enjoy the journey as much as the destination, as well as those you choose to share the adventure with. I've been your captain, Sammy Catlin. Until next time, fair winds, smooth sailing, and may your adventures be as unforgettable as those shared here on DeckTales. Bon voyage!